Hi y'all, I'm Brenda with Blessings and Bread. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be continuing my journey, learning more about sourdough bread, and I'm going to be making a new recipe. I'm going to be making whole wheat sourdough sandwich bread. So come along with me while I continue this journey. I would like to begin by kind of sharing about my starter. My starter, I fed it this morning about 10 and it's about 3 in the afternoon. But man, it's awesome. It's looking great. Maybe one of the best starters I think I've ever seen. To prepare to make the bread today though, I did feed it. Every day that I feed my starter, I feed it on a 1-3-3 schedule, which means I usually start with 25 grams starter and 75 grams of flour, which 25 grams of that is whole wheat flour and 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and then 75 grams of water. But today, because I was making bread, I started with 50 grams of starter, so 150 grams of flour and 150 grams of water. So it's still a 1-3-3, but one of the reasons I think it looks so good today is I decided today was the day I was going to clean my oven, and I have the automatic clean, so my kitchen is very, very warm. It's probably higher than 72 in here, so it did a great job, and I know this is ready to go. Now, just to give you an update on my journey about my starter is, this is the same starter I started in my first videos, and I've just kept it going. But throughout the summer, most of the summer, it's been in the fridge, and I would feed it, honestly, every week to 2 weeks. Sometimes I would forget to feed it. I'll be honest, I got off schedule. I just would feed it when I remembered to feed it. If I thought, oh, I hadn't fed it in a while, I would try to feed it. I was very inconsistent about when I would feed it as it sat in the fridge. And then occasionally I would take it out and let it, sit out on the counter a couple of days and feed it for a couple of days in a row, and then I would put it back in the fridge. So I've just been feeding it off and on. But like I said, for the most part, this feeder now resides in the refrigerator. I took it out a couple of days ago and started feeding it out on the counter every day. And so today it's really looking good and ready to go to make some whole wheat sourdough bread. So I'm excited about this, and we're just going to get started. I am going to measure, and if you're not new to sourdough bread, I recommend getting a scale. Almost all the recipes are by weight, and my recipe is as well. Or this really isn't my recipe. And as I said in some of my earlier videos, the one person that I really found I like her recipes and her methods was Baker Betty. And you can go to Baker Betty. That's where all my recipes come from, and I will give a link to the recipe. But her instructions are very thorough. She has good videos, and I've really learned a lot by following her. So this is her recipe. Now, I'm going to measure in this bowl 300 grams of starter, and I have put my bowl on here, and now I've zeroed out my bowl so that it's only going to weigh what I put in the bowl, the starter. So here we go, and I didn't do a float test. This is definitely doubled. If you need to see how I do a float test, you could see that in one of my other videos. So I'm going to get 300 grams of starter into this, and it will probably take most of this. My starter smells really good, and I'll be honest, a day or so ago I had it out, and I maybe for 2 days I even forgot to feed it, and it kind of had it was like, that's not the right smell. but I watched it. It didn't get any mold or anything, and it kept acting right. And now I just kept feeding it then, started feeding it on a pretty regular schedule and like I was supposed to. And I'm back to having that great sourdough smell to my starter. So, oh, that's just really good. So this is going to be a good starter, I think. So here we have 300 grams of starter. And I've already measured all of the other ingredients. So they're ready to go. Let's see if my water is still at between 90 and 95 degrees. Let's just see for a minute. May not be. I may have to heat my water again. It got to 90. I'm going to go with it. It's at 90. So your water should probably be between 90, I believe 90 and 95. Yeah, between 90 and 95. And now this is 650 grams of filtered water. I actually have a filter on my sink, under the sink filter. So this is filtered water. And I'm just going to take a minute to kind of mix in the starter into the water just a little bit so that when I add the rest of the ingredients, it mixes in together. It really doesn't matter what order you do this as long as you get it thoroughly mixed. All right, so next I'm going to start with my all-purpose flour. You can use all-purpose flour or bread flour, but everything I see about making bread or study about making bread really says that all-purpose flour makes a more tender loaf than bread flour. So, and I think the whole wheat flour is already going to make this a more dense loaf. So I decided not to use bread flour, but to use all-purpose. And then I'm now going to add 320 grams of whole wheat flour. I also understand from most of what I study is that homemade bread is almost never made with 100% whole wheat flour. That it just doesn't make a good loaf of bread at home. All right, now also today I'm using butter, which I said in a previous video that that's what I would like to do. So I've got this butter and it's really soft, if you can see. I'm just going to kind of, to help it mix in better, go ahead and break it into a few pieces or mash it more than anything. And I probably don't have to do this, but just thinking that will help. Mix it up. And then I'm going to use honey instead of sugar. Some people prefer sugar, but I like this to give it a little bit of a honey flavor. So we're making honey whole wheat sourdough bread. So this is my sweetener, and it is 80 grams of honey. And the final thing is 20 grams of either kosher or sea salt. And mine is actually sea salt. And just to make it easier to mix, I'm going to sprinkle it around. All right, and now I'm using this little spatula. You can use a dough hook. Man, my bowl's almost too full, but I think we'll be okay. I think once it starts to mix together, it won't be so full. It's that flour just all on top. So I'm going to just use I have a fly in the house. I have to be sure and keep everything covered and then get my fly swatter after him in a minute. On this journey, I really have learned that what I like to do best with my sourdough bread is make grilled cheese sandwiches. And what my plan to do with this, because I'm really the only one seems to be eating the homemade bread around here, and I don't need to eat a whole loaf, that once it's cooled and I slice it, I just go ahead and freeze it. And then once it's frozen, I can then just take out what I need, thaw it out, and make my grilled cheese sandwiches. Now, as you see, I'm just going to get my hands in here. It's really a pretty good chore to mix this. So we're just going to mix it until everything is all mixed together. And we don't want any dry parts or any flour left in the bottom of the bowl. And this will take probably about 2 to 3 minutes. If you've not ever made sourdough bread before and you're a little nervous about it, I would encourage you to do it. I've really enjoyed this process. I will say this, sourdough bread's a little more trouble than yeast bread. Seems like it takes longer for the process. I don't know, it just seems like I have to be sure I have a full day with almost nothing on my schedule in order to have time to go through the whole process. Now, I'm not busy very much at the time, but I need to be here to keep an eye on my bread and to there'll be processes to do throughout the day. I'm starting so late on this. I think I will be up very late tonight baking bread. I'm not an early riser. I'm a night owl. So I think it's coming together pretty good. Just a little bit more. Making sure all that flour in the bottom is mixed in. I can tell already from my past times that I've made sourdough bread that with this whole wheat flour, even the dough feels a little more dense. So even this dough is pretty dense. So already I can tell that's going to be different. There's something just about the texture of the sourdough bread, though, that just made those grilled cheese sandwiches, it just made it more robust of a sandwich. It had a better crunch to it. All right. I think the rest of this I'm going to wash off my hands, and we're going to, when I will get my hands washed, just 1 second. All right, before I put my lid on, or my cover on this, I want to double check. Did I get out all my ingredients? We did water, starter, some all-purpose flour, unbleached all-purpose flour, some whole wheat flour, butter was my fat, honey was my sweetener, and salt. The salt not only gives it flavor, but salt kind of helps to retard a little bit of the yeast or the sourdough starter from going too crazy. It's going to help retard that a little bit. Now, this is a trick I learned from several different people on this sourdough journey, and that's you need to go to Walmart and buy some of these really cheap shower caps. And then now I can just cover this with my shower cap. That is so easy, and it's doing a good job. And now I will come back in 30 minutes and we will start doing our stretch and folds, and we'll talk about that when I come back. It has been 30 minutes since we mixed our dough, so now I'm going to do my first stretch and fold. And what I want to do is to wet my hands a little bit, and then I want to kind of reach down under the dough and pull it up and stretch it over. And right now it's still a pretty shaggy, sticky dough. Then I'm going to turn the bowl and repeat that. So I'm just going to pull it up, stretch it, and fold it over. And these are called stretch and folds. And I'm going to do this probably go around the bowl a couple of times for the first one. So stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. This is helping to build up tension in your bread, and I can already see after one round, it's already built up some, just that little bit. And fold, so. All right, now I'm going to put the shower cap back on. We're going to let it sit for 30 more minutes, and then we'll do our second stretch and fold. All right, it's been another 30 minutes, and it's time for our second stretch and fold. And this time, probably will only have to go around the bowl once. This is really stretching, and it's building a lot of tension. So probably one thing around, and I will be good. One more, and we ought to be. As you can see, it's really forming more into a nicer, smoother ball of dough as we do these stretches. I put my shower cap back over the bowl, and we'll be back in about 30 minutes. The timing that you use for these stretch and folds doesn't have to be exactly 30 minutes, but you need to do about 4 of them within a 2-hour period. But we'll be back. We have 2 more to go. We'll be back in about 30 minutes to do our third stretch and fold. It is now time for my third stretch and fold. And by this time, we should really begin to start getting some pretty stiffer dough. Yeah. It's smoother, and it's getting more tension in it. So we're just going to do once around the bowl and turn just a quarter of a turn. But you can see it's really got some tension in it. Doesn't stretch as much. One more. And this will go back on. And in 30 minutes, we'll come and do our last stretch and fold. Now it's time for my final stretch and fold. So we're just going to, should be nice and tight. So we're just going to pull it and fold it. And I'm just going to do one turn, quarter turn, and go do 4 folds, just turn in a quarter turn each time. This is really a nice smooth dough now. It's not sticky anymore. I'm anxious. This is really seems to be a good dough. Now that was the last stretch and fold, so I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil. But you could also use Wesson oil, Wesson oil. You could use avocado oil or canola oil, whatever you want. Okay, so I've covered the top with a little oil. Now I'm going to put the shower cap back on the bowl, cover it again, and now this will sit for about 3 hours. It will not actually double in size like regular yeast bread will double, but it will rise and kind of come up in the bowl. So we're going to leave it for about 3 hours in a warm place, fairly anywhere from 72 to 75 degrees is good. And I find that mine does better when it's in a warmer situation. So I'm going to set this over closer to the stove where there might be some residual heat from where I was cleaning my oven earlier today. So hopefully this will, in 3 hours, be all ready to put into the baking pans. So we'll be back in about 3 hours. My bread dough has been sitting on the counter for 3 hours, and I don't know if you can tell, but it has kind of domed up and it's curved around the edges. It has not doubled in size. It won't double in size like yeast bread will, but definitely I can see it has kind of filled out with some air. The next thing, so we're ready basically to to shape the dough and put it into the pans. And I'm going to start, I have 2 pans. And my 2 pans are almost the same size, but this one might be a little bigger. So I probably will not divide my dough completely, just in half. But I'm going to start by spraying my pans with just some baking spray, just lightly. This whole process of making sourdough bread extends over a long period of time, but there's really very little work involved. Just little small snippets of work. This is the one where I'm going to actually shape the dough. Now, I want to put just a little bit of flour onto my breadboard here. I don't want a lot of flour, just a little bit, because the flour can prevent the dough from sticking to itself as I shape it. All right, so hopefully this is just going to fall right out. If I need some help, I can give it a little help, but it looks like it's coming right out. Yes, good. That was excellent. All right, so here's my dough. It is a full recipe, so it is enough dough for 2 loaves of bread. And I want to divide this in about half, but maybe one side can be just a little bit bigger. Putting a little flour on top, that's going to help to keep from my bench scraper, bench knife from sticking to the dough. So I'm just going to cut my dough into 2 sections, one for each pan. And then I want to treat this very lightly because I don't want to lose all my good air. So I'm going to just very carefully, I want to stretch it kind of into a rectangle. And then I'm going to take this side, pull it to the middle. And then I'm going to grab here very lightly, and pull it to the middle. Then I want to put just a little bit of flour on my fingers. Pull this side to the middle. Pull this side into the middle. And now I'm going to kind of try to pinch the ends closed. And then pinch my seam here. But then I'm going to do another little step where basically I'm pulling this in, and I've heard some people call this stitching, but I'm just kind of pulling it in to kind of get it into a little bit of a tighter loaf. And then I'm going to scrape this up, and I'm going to drop it into my pan. This is my smaller pan with the seam side down. And then I'm just going to lightly press it down, so I don't have any large air pockets in my dough. All right, and we're just going to repeat that same process with this other part. Lifting it very carefully and just pulling forward, folding it over. Pulling this side over, up and over. One thing I can see that I would wish I were doing better, but mine bread does not look as smooth on top. Let's see if I can do a better job with this one. Maybe with my stretch and folds, I need to work at making a smoother dough on top. Okay, now I'm going to pinch the ends. And then I'm going to do the extra stitching. Pinch that kind of together. And then this one is ready to go into the pan. seam side down. And then again, I'm just pressing lightly on it to make sure there aren't any large air bubbles in it. And then now I'm going to cover each of these. I only have this one. Actually, this one's even got moisture in it. I think I'm going to get some other shower curtains. I have a couple of more. Cover these, and then we're going to let these sit and rise till they're should be doming up above the bread pan a little bit, and this should take about 2 hours, I believe. This stage should be taking about 2 hours. So now 2 to 2.5 hours. So it's 9 o'clock, almost 9:30. So seriously, I said this earlier, it would probably be midnight when I was baking bread. I think it will be about midnight when these loaves are ready. But again, between now and midnight, I don't have to do anything. I just have to keep an eye on my bread and make sure it doesn't over proof. So I'm going to set these back in a warm place and let them proof. And then we'll come back when I'm ready to put them in the oven. It has been 2.5 hours since I shaped my dough and put it in the pan. So it should be about time to bake it. It has not risen above the pan, but I did do a little poke test. And a poke test is where you just put a little flour on your finger and you poke into your dough, and if it comes back slowly, then you know it's right. If it comes back too fast, then it needs more time to build air. And both of those are coming back slowly, in fact, very slowly. And basically when it doesn't come back at all is when it's been overproofed. So I think to leave it any longer would possibly cause it to overproof. It is still kind of rising back in, so I think I'm good. About 30 minutes ago, I put a 9 by 13 metal pan on the very bottom rack in my oven and put 2 cups of water in it. And then turn the oven on to preheat to 400 degrees. So that has been happening for 30 minutes, and it's been creating steam in the oven, which will help it to bake better and to have a better rise. Also, I have my baking stone on the middle shelf, which is where I'm going to add the loaves of bread, and they're going to actually bake on the middle shelf on top of my baking stone. If you don't have a baking stone, you can take 2 cookie sheets and put them together and set your loaves on that. And the purpose of this is to keep the bottom of your bread from getting too brown. The last thing I'm going to do before I put it in the oven is I'm going to sprinkle the tops of it with water, just sprinkling with my hands. A spray bottle would be a better thing to do, but I don't have one. So I'm just going to do a little sprinkling. This will also create some steam, which will help the bread to rise better. So I'm going to put my bread in the oven. For 15 minutes, I'm going to cook it with the water, the pan of water still on the bottom. And then in 15 minutes, I will take that out. And then I will continue to bake it for 15 to 20 minutes. I like to test mine with a thermometer. And I will eventually check to make sure at the end of the 30 to 40 minutes that it is at 200 degrees. And I will just stick my thermometer in the side and check to make sure that it's fully cooked, or fully baked. So I'm gonna get these in the oven, and then I will be back basically in the morning because it's late at night. I'm not going to cut this till morning. I want it to be completely cooled before I cut this bread. So we'll come back and take a look at it and see how it turns out in the morning after it has baked. All right, my bread is out of the oven and it's set overnight. Actually, I ended up cooking my bread almost 45 minutes before it got to 200. I was checking it with the thermometer to make sure it was done. So they say thump, and it's supposed to sound hollow, but I kind of don't trust myself with that because I've undercooked bread too many times. So I always check with a thermometer, and I just poke it in the side, and then to the center and make sure it's at 200 degrees. And it took about 45 minutes. It looks like it's a little bit brown, but remember this is whole wheat bread, so it would be darker anyway. Again, I have this splitting going on. Now, I did have one of my viewers say I should score my bread, and I forgot to do that. And the scoring did help before. I have done that scoring when I made some. It does help. What's interesting to me, though, that as I said earlier, I'm following Betty Baker or Baker Betty and her things, and she does not score her bread, and hers does not seem to do that. So I don't know if it's just my oven that causes it to split, but it's still, this might be hard pressed to make some good sandwiches out of it, sandwich bread, which is what I want to use it for, is for some grilled cheese sandwiches. So we're going to start with, I think I'm going to cut the one that looks more, didn't split quite as much. And let's cut into this and see what it looks like. I'm going to take it off this cooling rack now. I'll just put it here on the breadboard. Oh wow, that looks pretty good. So it has a fairly even looking crumb there, a few good holes. That's characteristics of the sourdough bread. It smells super, super sour. All right, what I'm going to do though now is I'm going to cut another piece of bread, and I'm going to go make me a grilled cheese sandwich with it, and then I'll be back and we will test this bread. It's good. It's a little bit dense, which almost makes me think maybe overproofed a little bit. Maybe this is what it's supposed to be. Definitely has a little bit of a sour taste, but it's a more mellow sourdough taste. Better than, I think, my bread before. A good chewy crust. So, definitely tastes great. It is definitely more dense than regular white sandwich bread. But the true test for me is what kind of grilled cheese sandwich did it make? Because that's literally what I want this bread for, is to make grilled cheese sandwiches. That's what I found my favorite thing to do with it is. So I've made one, and I'm going to try and see how well did this make a grilled cheese sandwich. It definitely does make a good grilled cheese sandwich. As far as flavor goes, I think because it's sourdough bread, I can't really kind of feel the essence of the wheat flour. There probably isn't enough of the wheat flour to make a difference in how it tastes between this bread and the sandwich bread, but it's definitely got that robust texture to it that makes this grilled cheese sandwich amazing. So it's still a plus, it's still a winner. I still have a lot to learn. I definitely need to figure out how to avoid this when I make my bread. I've got to learn to remember to score my bread before I bake it, and hopefully that will prevent this splitting or this bursting that it's doing on me. But again, a very good learning experience. I'm not sure if I made sourdough bread the next time, will I make just all white bread or make the whole wheat? The whole wheat definitely would be healthier. And since there's not a lot of difference in flavor, I would probably go with the whole wheat bread. But it's good, and I enjoyed the process. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you'll come back and join me as I continue this journey. The next thing I really think I'd like to try is to make some sourdough pizza dough. So maybe I'll get that video out in the future, and I hope you'll come back the next time I'm in my kitchen, on my porch, or in my garden.